Welcome back to reading number 5. So we're looking at the second half of chapter 7, I believe. So just to recap what happened in the previous section, right? Sulla has been marching towards Mithridates. Eventually, the two of them are going to come to an arrangement. Essentially, they make peace so that Sulla, who is heading back to Rome, doesn't have an enemy at his back, because while Sulla was dealing with Mithridates in the east, Marius, who had been chased out of the city, and the other consul Cinna come back into Italy. They reparo, they bring a war back into Italy, and that's where we pick up. Okay, so we start with the participle ingressi from ingredior. Get a nice accusative here, urbem Romam. Nobilissimos, another accusative. E senatu, so that's an ablative prep phrase. Consulares viros, big old accusative here. And then we have our verb here. Third plural, perfect. So what we have in ingressi is a participle. It's a participle from a deponent verb. So instead of saying having been verbed, it's having verbed. And ingredior means to enter. So having entered the city of Rome, that's a fine translation. But with participles, right, we want to open that tool belt a little bit. After they entered the city of Rome, could be because they entered, probably not here, but after is usually a good go-to. After they, or maybe even just when, after they entered the city of Rome, and let's remind ourselves who they are. Now, I know it's plural people because it's ingressi, right? It's nominative plural. I also know from the verb here, they are going to do something. And just a reminder who the they are, we're talking about Marius, and we're talking about Cinna. So Marius and Cinna, after they entered the city of Rome, we get an accusative here, nobilissimos e senatu, the most noble of the Senate, right? The most noble men from the Senate, and the consular men, meaning the men of consular rank, could be the ex-consuls, could just be the upper echelon, interfe cerunt, so there's our verb. After they entered the city of Rome, they, meaning Marius and Cinna, killed the most noble men from the Senate and the consulares viro, and the men of consular rank, right? The men who had achieved the rank of consul. So essentially, Marius and Cinna go into the city and they start to take people out, right? They go for the jugular. They take out the most powerful men in the Senate and the most powerful men in Rome. So they mean business. And again, going back to what we said in class, there's clearly a bias here for Sulla, because Marius is being painted as quite the villain, going back, marching into the city, and starting to, take people out. So after they came back into Rome, they start wiping out the nobles. Multos, in the accusative, proscripserunt, so there's our verb, third plural, perfect, very common. Ipsius, which is ipsa, is in the genitive case, right? It's one of those like hic haec hoc, huius, or is ea id, eius. Ipse in the genitive is ipsius. And it helps to have sulai right there in the genitive. Now, I know it's not nominative plural, because there's only one Sulla. Dative, there's always got to be a reason for something to be dative. And what we're dealing with here is domo sulai, the house of Sulla, Sulla's house. We have domo in the ablative. We also have eversa in the ablative. Verto means to turn. Verto means to destroy, basically, to turn out, to turn upside down. And they are both in the ablative. More on that in a second. Philios, uxorem, right? Both accusative. We have a little prep phrase here, ad fugam compulerunt, third plural, perfect. Stop me if you heard that before. So they took out the noblemen. The next thing we learn is that they proscriboed, and there's no better way to translate this other than they proscribed. Oops. They proscribed many. And this is a cultural moment. In this time, there were lists referred to as proscription lists. If your name was proscribed, if your name was put on the list, essentially what that meant was that your property, your money, and your life were forfeit. You lost the rights to your property and your belongings and even your life. It meant that legally you could be murdered. This is a big deal. The only people who get proscribed are essentially people who are deemed enemies of the state. So when Marius comes in, he takes all the people who are loyal to Sulla and he puts their names on a list. And you pin that up in the public square, and everybody can look at it and say, hey, I remember that guy. He's got a lot of money. And now I can show up to his house and I can murder him and I can steal all of it just because his name is on that list. So it's a very, very dark time because you might be proscribed one day and then Sulla comes in, right? You were loyal to Sulla, now you're off the list. Or if you were loyal to Marius, you might have been on the winning side one day and then the tables might turn on you. So this is a very, very dark time in Rome where you were essentially legalizing murder of your political opponents, which is something we would never tolerate in America today. We don't murder, we don't put in jail our political opponents, right? Can you guys tell what day it is? So they proscribed many, and compulerunt, they forced ad fugam, they forced to flight, they forced to flee his filios and his uxorem, his children and his wife. But before we get to that point, we get domo e versa. We have an ablative noun, we have an ablative participle. With Sulla's house, with the house of Sulla himself, and with the house of Sulla himself, e versa, destroyed. And with the house of Sulla himself destroyed, they forced his children and his wife, we would probably just say in English, force them to flee. So we have an ablative absolute. With his house having been destroyed, we could do that a little better, and we could say, and after the house of Sulla himself, we would probably say Sulla's house, but to get that himself in there, after Sulla himself's house just doesn't sound quite as good. After the house of Sulla himself was destroyed, they, meaning Marius and Cinna, forced Sulla's family, his children and his wife, to get out, forced them out of the city. This is a very, very dangerous time. I'll keep coming back to that because it's a pretty scary when political rivals turn into, enemies. Universus in the nominative case, reliquus in the nominative case, senatus in the nominative case, ex urbe, ablative place from which, and then we have a present active participle. And we've seen this pretty much this exact structure before, where you have a noun, particularly a nominative here, you have a participle at the end, and you have your extra business in the middle. So the universus reliquus senatus, the entire remaining Senate. I don't know if that's good English. The entire rest of the Senate. The entire remainder of the Senate. Does that sound okay? All the senators who are left. Fugiens ex urbe, fleeing from the city. So all the senators who had not been murdered running away from the city. So we still don't have our verb yet, right? We just did a participle here. Ad sulam in Graeciam venit. And that is third singular. Perfect. Now, even though the Senate is made up of senators, we have a singular verb here because we're treating the Senate as a unit. So the entire rest of the Senate, the entire remaining members of the Senate fleeing from the city, venit, came, ad sulam, came to Sulla in Greece. Now you might notice that it's in Graeciam, so literally they came into Greece. Is that how we would say it in English? They came to Sulla into Greece? They came into Greece? They went to Greece? They came to him in Greece. Whatever you want. Okay, no stuff. Orans, so you can tell that Eutropius is a very big fan of the present active participle. Orare means to beg. Begging him. It's not there, but we know it should be there. And then we have an ut clause here. So what kind of ut clause is going to come after the verb begging? Begging him to do something, asking him to do it, beseeching him to do it. This would be an indirect command. We have a dative in patriae because of the verb subvenio. Subvenio, third singular, imperfect subjunctive. It's imperfect because the whole sentence is taking place in the past. So that should actually be venit. So the entire remainder of the Senate goes to Sulla in Greece, begging him to subvenio the patriae. Venio obviously means to come or to arrive. Subvenio, to, you know, I mean, I know what he's trying to say here, but the best translation, and you guys will always see me do this, right? And I am not ashamed to pull out the dictionary and try to find the best English word, because sometimes it just, you know, doesn't come to me. So subvenio is to come to the aid of, right? So to aid. And it takes the dative, mainly because it's subvenio. And sometimes when you have a compound like that, it goes with the dative. Begging him to rescue the city. So the Senate, the ones who get out alive, they flee to Greece, and they tell Sulla, please, please, please come back. You got to save us. The city's been taken. Illa, that guy, in Italiam, triecit. Third singular perfect tense. So what did he do? Illa being Sulla. He trieccio means to, anything with trans, right, means across. So he crossed into Italy. He crossed over into Italy. I think the idea here being you got to take a boat, right? So you got to cross over into Italy. And in the next line we have bellum civile, which could be nominative, could be accusative, but we've got that participle gesturus. And we've had this pretty much this exact expression before. Gesturus means about to wage war, going to wage war. Here, when it's in this context, he crossed into Italy to wage war, or to fight a civil war. So the literal translation is that he crossed over into Italy about to wage a civil war. It's an absolutely fine translation. When you have a future active participle like that, it can also be a form of purpose, right? He crossed over to wage war, right? Adversus, we might not know this, but that is actually a preposition. And it goes with the accusative case. So get ready for the longest accusative we've had. Ba-bam! He crossed over to Italy about to wage a civil war against Norbanus and and Scipio, because the nominative is Scipio, the consuls. So the Senate comes to meet with Sulla and says, please, come back, come back, come back, come back, back. He goes into Italy, finna wage a civil war against the two consuls, Norbanus and Scipio. Et primo proelio. Stop me if you've seen that expression as well. It's so nice when you read one author and they start to repeat themselves because they're just freebies, right? Et primo proelio contra, another preposition that takes the accusative. He really likes this verb dimicavit. Dimico is to fight, basically, to struggle against someone. Non longe a capua. So non longe we had before, it was non longe ab Athenis, I believe. This is non longe a capua. And that's a stock expression, how you would say not far from a place. So he crosses over, finna wage a war, and in the first battle, primo proelio, he fought against Norbanus, non longe a Capua, not far from Capua. You guys know the city of Capua, or maybe you've read a play that takes place in Capua? I believe Capua is where... Ooh, which Shakespearean play? Which Shakespearean play? Oh, I should know this. Oh, man. My brain is not working. I think there's a Shakespearean play that's set in Capua. But here's Capua. Capua is in Campania, which is the region of Naples. So you're a little bit south of the city. So you imagine if you're coming back from Greece, right? Especially if you're in the north of Greece. If you're in Athens, you're probably kind of going here. When you take the boat, most likely what you're going to do is you're going to take the shortest route possible. So you're going to get off somewhere in the heel of the boot. Brindisium was a big port city. Maybe you go to Bari, and then you're making your way back over. So here he is in Capua. So he's getting real close to Rome, right? This is about, from Rome to Naples is a couple-hour drive. So you figure you're not more than a couple days march, right? It's a pretty short trip. So Norbanus, who's one of the consuls, goes and meets Sulla's advancing army, and I think you probably already know how this fight is going to go. Because there, at that time, really, sex milia eius cecidit. Kaido here means to cut down. So sex milia eius cecidit, third singular perfect tense. I know that this is not nominative, they're not the subject because the verb here is singular. So he cut down, killed. He killed 6,000, and then eius here, of his. So he cut down, and I want to make sure we get the pronouns here. Sulla killed 6,000 of his, Norbanus's, men. Another sex milia capit. So he killed 6,000 of Norbanus's men, captured another 6,000, and then we have a Roman numeral here in the accusative case, amisit, third singular, perfect. So Sulla killed 6,000 of Norbanus's men, he captured 6,000, and he lost 124 suos. He lost 124 of his own men. So Sulla is advancing, Norbanus is defending the city, and Norbanus loses 6,000 men to death, 6,000 of his men are captured, and Sulla loses 124 of his own men. Totally accurate. Definitely the exact way that that battle went down. And Inde, from there, etiam as well, also, ad Scipionem se convertit. So third singular perfect tense. Stop me if you heard that before. So from there, Inde, from there, those of you who study the Romance languages, you probably know what a reflexive verb is, right? It's a verb that always comes with like a me or a te or a se, right? Like brushing your teeth is usually reflexive because you brush your own teeth, right? And it's like saying, I brush me teeth, you brush you teeth. Latin doesn't have reflexive verbs, but it does have certain situations like this where it's often with a reflexive. So converto means to turn. Se means himself. So it says that he turns himself, or he turned himself, past tense. He turned himself ad Scipionem. So you can literally think of this as to turn oneself, to physically turn yourself. But as an expression, he turned his attention to Scipio. So from there, he turned his attention to Scipio, right? He's clearly defeated Norbanus. That was one of the consuls. Now he turns his eyes to Scipio. And ante proelium totum. So we have a prep phrase here. Ante, I keep doing that for prep. Ante takes the accusative. So ante proelium totum, before the entire battle. This doesn't sound good in English. So keep that in mind. We're going to have to clean that up. Eius here in the genitive. Exercitum sine sanguine in deditionem accepit. So third singular perfect. He accepit in deditionem. Deditio is surrender. So he accepted into surrender. We would say in English, how would we say that in English? He allowed them to surrender? He took them into English. He took them, he accepted their surrender? Is that literally accepit? Is that how we should say it? Yeah, we would say he accepted the surrender of. That's probably the best way. So the direct object here is his army. So he accepted his army. Sulla accepted Scipio's army. He accepted their surrender. He accepted Scipio's army's... How about he accepted the surrender of Scipio's army? That sounds pretty good. Sine sanguine, without blood. Ante proelium totum, before the entire battle. This is more like we would say in English, before there was a battle. Before there was even a battle. I think that sounds pretty good. He accepted the surrender of Scipio's army, bloodless surrender, no blood, before there was even a battle. So the idea here is, like in any great movie, your main character beats the you-know-what out of one guy and then does that awesome move where he goes, and he turns, and that other person goes, oh, nope, don't come after me. That's the picture that he's painting here, is that he whoops up on Norbanus' army, and then he turns his attention to Scipio, and Scipio's entire army goes, no, we surrender. That's how awesome Eutropius thinks Sulla was, right? He's clearly painting Sulla in a very, very, very good light. Okay? And that's the end of this section, so we'll pick it up. We got one more section tomorrow, and then on Friday in class, we'll read through section 9, and we will put book 5 to bed. All right, guys. Have a good one.